he makes a series of frank and sobering observations about South Africa's past and present, with lessons on subjects ranging from GBV to family values and the transformation of the judiciary. Justice Ngwephe boasts a stellar record for his contributions to and participation in the country's legal profession, acting as a pioneer and trailblazer for other black professionals. I joined him at his home to chat about his latest venture and his counsel for the country during politically and socially turbulent times. Judge Ngwephe, thank you for having me at your house, and thank you for a lovely pot of tea.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful excuse, this occasion of you having written a book, to be able to spend time together, reflecting not only on what you've written, but also the state we're in South Africa today. So I'm really excited for the conversation. And I guess I want to start off with this kind of humility that we see you express throughout your book. You didn't want this to be an autobiography. You didn't want a book to be written about yourself. Why were you so specific that this had to be about something bigger than yourself?
I was specific because, firstly, I didn't think that writing about myself would have been a tremendous thing. What is so important about me as an individual? I know some people urged me time and again to write a biography of myself, but no, I didn't think that I would go that way. I'm not Mandela. What's there to read about me? But the point is, the book goes beyond myself. And as I say in the book itself, I don't own history. And I have no monopoly on wisdom. So what I do in the book then is to go beyond myself. And I look at events that are above me, below me, around me, and indeed events that even were experienced by different people. And I theme them out, and I say, well, what's there to learn from all these events?
That ethos of doing for yourself, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, was very strongly instilled in you as a young boy.
Absolutely, yes. And I challenge young people of today, and I end up that part of the book by saying, good things don't come by themselves. You've got to work hard for them. But then I say that during those days, as you correctly say, no family would be allowed to go to sleep without food if their neighbors had something. And people talk now lately about Ubuntu as if it's a new thing, as if it's a fashionable thing. It may be fashionable to talk about it, but these things happened in the past. We lost them. They are no longer there. And these were the things that held communities together. These were the things that ensured that as society we managed to go on, we look after ourselves. The strange thing, nature is a very interesting thing. It has provided each one of us, in fact every species, with certain instincts which from time to time have to kick in action in order to ensure that not only do we survive, but we perpetuate ourselves as the human race. And these things are like looking after your child, then you look after the children in the community and the like. And I just think that we have lost some of them. And well, as you know, that is the gist of the book. Let's go back in history. Let's go and dig in history. You don't even have to dig deep into history to find all these hidden values and lessons that make sure that we lead as a people, and even as peoples, we lead a better life and make the world a better place, let alone making South Africa a better place.
The one thing that stands out as well is this lack of romance about growing up poor. And the sentence for me really stood out, where you say that poverty should never be embraced. There is no virtue in doing so. Poverty dehumanizes a person. And, you know, embedded in that, in these experiences with your grandmother, Mahabo, who was visually impaired, who had a visual impairment, and the lessons she taught you about being stoic and resilient, even in a context of not having very much. This was something quite powerful. And how does it resonate for us in South Africa today, where even though we have managed to throw off the yoke of apartheid, poverty is still very much an uncomfortable bedfellow of ours?
And yet, it could have been if not totally avoided, drastically reduced. You know why? Because, and this is also with reference to the gulf between the rich and the poor in this country. People say that we have got the widest gulf in the world. And yet, this country is not poor. If this country was poor, if this country did not have resources, we would not have been having millionaires and billionaires in this country. You don't cultivate billionaires and millionaires in a country which is poor. This is a rich country with resources. And the important thing is how to exploit those resources. To harness our own energies and bring them together to make sure that we use and employ those resources in the way that will benefit all of us. But it is again about making sure that we work hard together honestly. And we've missed so many chances. I may have to come back to that again because those are very strong issues that I feel about in the book.
Is that the reason why you put it as such a strong tenet of your book in the beginning? This focus on family, this focus on hard work, this focus on, despite the environment, we have the power to create the life of our own dreams, even in a context of oppression.
It's not the professor of law that taught me for the first time how to treat a woman. It's not the professor of law who for the first time taught me about to respect somebody's property. It's not the professor of law that for the first time taught me to respect my neighbor's privacy by not making too much noise, by not making playing my radio too much. It is my grandmother who could neither read or write. It was my mother who was semi-literate. Now all those things are taught in us by the family. But you know where we lose the point? We lose the point when we grow up. And we begin to think that my behavior should only be regulated by heart law. My behavior should only be regulated by Mr. Kelly, the Minister of Police. I can do anything as long as it doesn't break the law. It's fine. That's wrong. We disregard very important rules which regulate our conduct, including religious rules.
You know, as you're talking, I'm remembering something you wrote in the beginning as well about corporal punishment. When I read it, I kind of sat up in my chair a little bit. I thought, is Judge a proponent of corporal punishment? But you framed it in an interesting way. Share it with our viewers.
I have a problem when some people begin to suggest that corporal punishment, if administered, would necessarily result in children being violent. I just posed a question. I said, well, I recall I was subjected to corporal punishment at the school, but I don't remember turning out to be a violent person. I remember my friends and colleagues at primary school being subjected to corporal punishment, but I don't recall they became so violent as to assault their teachers. I don't recall that they became so violent as a result of that. But let me make the point. I wasn't saying that I was not advocating for corporal punishment. I was just saying, pointing out the difficulty that you're confronted with. Let me contextualize that point properly, which you have raised, before people misunderstand it. This is the point. How do we manage to reach a point today where where children assault teachers? How do we reach the point where children today, time and again, stab each other to death at school? We didn't have that point. How did we manage to reach that point? We managed to reach that point because we failed to learn certain lessons. The point that I was making.
When you were needing a place to become a candidate attorney, one of your professors reached out to an Afrikaans law firm who actually opened the door for you. Obviously, you had struggled to try and get a placement. It was difficult for black candidate attorneys at that time to get a place to practice the law, in a sense. Share with us this different framing you're encouraging us to have about the role that white people, particularly white Afrikaners, played in creating positive opportunities, particularly when it came to your career advancement.
You know, there are certain perceptions in this country which needs to be dispelled, and one of them was an assumption that a certain language played a role during the struggle. It is not so. There are many African-speaking people who would sacrifice their futures, their careers, in their fight against apartheid. Do I have to mention people like Bram Fisher? Is there anyone who doesn't know about them? Do I have to mention Beyers Nodi? There are so many of them who contributed towards the struggle. And I mentioned that particular professor to demonstrate that particular point, that there were white African-speaking people who contributed a great deal during the struggle, and in many ways. And yes.
And in your personal life specifically,
yes.
There was a huge impact in opening the way for you, breaking, as you comment in the book, a 300-year tradition of keeping black people out of the legal profession. You in this law firm, the very first black candidate attorney, and even when there was a blatant attempt at racism within that organization, the partners in the firm acted.
The partner in the firm acted, and we're talking a situation where when I was about to be taken into that firm, I was going to be the first professional person, a black person ever to be taken into that firm, and the senior partner called the staff of about 30, 40 people to say, hey, people, we're going to have the first black professional person to come and join us in this firm, and he told everybody to cooperate. But soon thereafter, it reached him that one of the typists said that she was going to, once that black person comes into the firm, she was going to bring her own cup of tea, because she dreaded the possibility of one time just happening to use a cup that I would have used. And when it reached that particular partner, he called the staff, related the incident, and turned to the person concerned and said, you are fired. There was some determination to some extent on the part of some people to put things right.
Where does that moment sit in South Africa today, where there is still a struggle around the transformation of the judiciary and the role that a lot more female legal professionals can play within the law profession?
We have not yet reached the point that we reached. There has been some transformation of the judiciary to some extent, and you recall that when I was appointed judge president, I was the only black judge in Pretoria and maybe one or two in Johannesburg, and my objective was, I'm going to be the judge president. One of my main objective is to try and transform the judiciary, which I thought I did. But that's a discussion for another day. I made some contribution. But there is still some difficulty about that. We haven't reached that point. And there were some challenges, and given the centrality of the judiciary, the central role that the judiciary was going to play in this country, there were tremendous problems about that. And you read in the book that when I was interviewed, I was vehemently opposed. The number of people who did not want me at that time to be appointed judge president, and one of the people interviewed me and said, you must wait. It's not yet time. You must wait. Why can't you wait? I said, no, I can't wait. And he became so agitated that he said to me, why can't you wait? And that's when I responded. I said, sir, I can't wait anymore. I've waited for 300 years to be appointed judge president. I've waited long enough. And that created some bit of an awkward moment during the interview. But maybe that's the kind of language that sometimes we need to speak. And I want the other point I want to make out of that kind of scenario is that, please, all of us, those of you who are going to contest for strategic positions in this country, please be prepared to find that there's going to be huge contestation against you. Please be prepared that there may well be blood on the floor, but don't be deterred, don't be put back, because you need to know why you want to aspire for that particular position.
Because this was a theme. I mean, if I think back also to the day that you became an admitted attorney, it was a tumultuous day in South Africa. It was June 16th. The Soweto riots had just erupted. The country was burning. You had just taken your oath. You had gone on then to receive many rejection letters from law firms saying they couldn't hire a Bantu from the Transvaal. And that ambition in this context of a country that needed you, needed a black lawyer to defend the rights of a number of marginalized black people, kind of morphs into the formation of the Black Lawyers Association. And this lobbying that you had to do is pioneering lobbying for law firms owned and run by black attorneys to be in the city centers where it could be more easily accessible. There's a running theme about the fact that the Black Lawyers Association still has a strong work that it needs to accomplish and progress that it needs to accomplish in South Africa.
Well, for a body like that to continue existing, it only tells you one thing, that there is still a need for that kind of thing for that kind of body to exist. You know, when a body or an association no longer needs to exist, it will fizzle out. People will no longer go to the meetings. People will no longer be interested in it. But if that kind of body continues to exist, it means that the problems that it meant to address are still there, and is demonstration of the fact that we have not yet reached to where we want to be.
I think maybe let's move then, and this was also interesting to me. I didn't know that you were also at one point a bottle store owner. That was a story that made me chuckle a little bit. I don't know if you want to comment just a little bit about that. You know, sometimes there's no straight line in a career. It's going to take some detours, and you make some choices and decisions that people in hindsight might say, "What?"
You see, I was trying to demonstrate a particular point, and I said the whole purpose of owning a bottle store at the time, it was an attempt to try and prepare myself to venture into the unknown. And the theme there is the issue of preparation. And planning. When is planning for the future, for the unknown, enough? Is it ever enough? And I say sometimes we fail ourselves. We indulge in over-planning so much that in fact we end up making it too difficult for ourselves to venture into the unknown. And yet it is important that sometimes we must try and move out of the comfortable zones and go into the unknown. The issue is how do you plan? But don't over-plan for something. I think I over-planned when I tried to move from being an attorney to being an advocate.
And you managed to do it. You managed to do it successfully, Judge. There's so many other delicious moments of reflection in your book as you look at society, as you look at the progression of the law profession itself, some of the experiences that you had. And I suppose, in closing, I really want to reflect on where we are in South Africa today. One of the things you were really keen that we discussed in this interview was on this can-do attitude that we need to have as a country with the things that we have at our disposal and within our control to create the country of our dreams. And you make a comparison between how the Afrikaners were able to do it and where we sit now in democracy.
Well, actually, that brings us to the main purpose of the book as to why I wrote the book. It's because we failed to learn, for example, from the Afrikaner people, and also from the people who were the champions of apartheid. And I'm not glorifying apartheid. I'm saying that let us sit back and let's look let us look at their history. After the Afrikaner took over the run of this country, let me just say from 1948, after the National Party came to power, they went into massive projects such as industrialization of the country. They started building things such as Eskom and the like. They had people like, for example, Dr. Van der Bijl. Very people know that the town of Van der Bijl Park is actually named after one of the greatest African industrialists, Dr. Van der Bijl. They drove institutions and built institutions such as Eskom. We speak as, how do you write Eskom? With a K. You know where that K from? You don't write Eskom with a C. You write Eskom with a K. It comes from an African word, komisi. Something like the city komisi. Same thing applies to Telkom. You write Telkom with a K. They show the dominance of Africans in those institutions, and they build them to provide work for their people, and so forth and so on.